Regular City Council meeting of November 17th, 2021 at 7 p.m. to order. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland is absent. Tom Baylor is absent. Kathy Sherman.
Here.
Jeff Guard.
Here.
Melina Meyer is absent. Ann Schaefer.
Here.
David Allison.
Here.
And David Gleason is absent. That is a quorum of council.
Okay, thank you. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda.
Move to approve. Move to approve. Second.
We have multiple moves and seconds. Thank you very much. All in favor? Well, should we do roll call, Susan, with everybody else?
Aye.
If you want.
Aye.
You can take no objection to that one.
Okay, and no objections, hearing none?
It's right.
Yep. Disclosures of conflicts of interest and ex parte communications. Anyone? Hearing none. Communications by and petitions from visitors. Guest speakers, do we have anyone from the incident management team online?
Helen, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. So we don't have anybody calling in that you know of for that? I don't know of anyone.
I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
Okay, hearing none. We'll move on. Audience comments regarding agenda items.
You might just say that. Or is it?
And we have an audience of, looks like city department staff in the audience. Chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions.
You can see, but I doubt it.
Yep.
Dr. Sanders, are you on the line? Or Barb Jewell or Mr. Russin?
Okay, hearing none. Student council representative report.
Not this time.
Not this time. So we're going to move on to approval of consent calendar. Anybody want to pull anything?
Aye. Aye.
5? I think he said 5.
Okay. Okay, we got
And
Say it again?
5 and 6, Mr. Allison.
Roger that.
Okay, got that.
Okay, on the rest of the consent calendar, Melina Meyer is absent. David Allison?
Yes.
Tom Baylor is absent. Jeff Guard?
Yes.
Kathy Sherman?
Yes.
David Gleason is absent. Ann Schaefer?
Yes.
Consent calendar is approved.
Okay, so
And you can put 5 and 6 behind 13.
okay, so we will move number 5 to
13A.
13A, and we'll move number 6 to 13B or 14, whatever.
Well, 13B.
And approval of minutes were in the consent calendar. Consideration of bids, we have none. Reports of officers, mayor's report. And Clay is at CEC board meeting tonight because of the Thanksgiving holiday. So city manager's report, Helen, we'll move to you.
Thank you, everybody. I've got some great news. We received word yesterday morning that we've been awarded a raise grant of $20 million for our harbor project. So we don't yet have the documentation from DOT. We're not making a huge public splash until we know exactly what it entails. But the delegation, basically, both senators and our congressman called us to congratulate us on the award. There were 2 awarded in Alaska. One went to Haynes and one went to us. And the good news is that it's It's part of a package that, coupled with the State of Alaska Tier 1 grant and the match that we have committed, will bring us to $30 million for our South Harbor rebuild. So it's absolutely fabulous news, and we'll have more to report as soon as we get our documentation from DOT. But we are a lucky bunch today, so I just wanted to share that information. And I also want to thank the entire team that put that grant application together. Sam, obviously, it was instrumental. Tony with the harbor, instrumental. And Curtis, our communications and special projects person, instrumental. And the three of them created, obviously, a competitive grant application, and I could not be more proud that we were awarded. I will say today there was a lot of envy in the room. I'm at AML right now, and there were many other communities in Alaska that applied for those grants, Whittier, Valdez, Sitka, among others, and they did not meet the bar to be recipients. So we should be really grateful, and I think we now have a pretty good kickstart on our project. I'm a little bit concerned about the cost of the project. As we all know, things are just skyrocketing, and building materials are scarce, and contractors to do work are also scarce. So we have requested a review of the budget to see where we might fall short, and we'll be looking for additional resources if we need it. So I just want to applaud my staff and everyone in the community that's been very patiently waiting for this project to happen. We can honestly say now we have begun. So that's the good news. I'm working on the budget still. In tonight's packet, you'll see a resolution to accept some more ARPA funds. The feds have released to the state, which has released to communities, additional resources that can be used, in this case specifically, to plug budget deficits from 2020 that were incurred due to the COVID crisis. So we are going to, with your permission and with your approval tonight of that resolution, we will be submitting for an additional chunk of money, which will go a long way towards helping us with some budget needs, including capital that we've been overlooking for some time. So I'll keep you posted on that as soon as we have some indication of what that might look like. There's no actual dollar award that we're competing for. There's just a pile of money, and they're going to divide it up somehow magically. So let's see, the budget I will be revising and presenting to you before Thanksgiving, the final staff prepared budget for your consideration, and then we'll do one more work session before the final approval on the 16th or 15th. So I'm just giving you a little bit of a heads up, but the union negotiations and increases in some costs that were unanticipated are throwing a little bit of a monkey wrench into the budget process here, but we'll get the puzzle put together for you by before Thanksgiving. And that's it for me. Thanks. Any questions?
Any questions online for the city manager?
This is Councilman Schaefer.
Councilman Schaefer, go ahead, please.
I don't have a question. I was just going to say, yeah, good job to you and staff with the grant. That's super exciting. So thank you.
Anyone else online?
Yeah, this is Councilman Guard.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that, and I'd also like to ask if we're still maybe in the running for the EDA grant for the harbor that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, we have not yet submitted. We were waiting for the build grant, the raise grant announcement. And it's really a matter, we have to manage our match. So the EDA grant requires match, raise does not require match, state requires match, and we have to puzzle piece how the match could be applied. And it may be that under the circumstances we may have other projects that we want to use EDA for. But we're going to, now that we have this information, we'll be scrubbing the numbers and trying to figure out what makes the most sense about how to proceed. I also, during AML, sat in on some workshops, not workshops, some public sessions with the delegation around and their staff around what we can expect. But there's a lot of uncertainty on the part of the state and the various agencies that are going to be receiving all these federal funds, that they don't necessarily yet have capacity to distribute those funds in a meaningful way. And so there's a lot of uncertainty about how these monies are going to get put out. But we, the raise grant has nothing to do with the Biden administration's infrastructure bill. It's separate apart. It's already been funded in previous, in this year's budget, and it's ready to go. So that's where we're at, and we'll keep you posted on the EDA.
And thank you very much for all the hard work, and it's nice to have a success once in a while. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I have to really give kudos to staff for their hard work and patience and the immense amount of work that they put into this, the many meetings they sat in on to make sure we were doing the right thing. So it's really the gold star goes to them.
This is Councilman Sherman, and they are all sitting here, and so we are applauding them.
Good.
Any other questions for the city manager? Hearing none, we'll move on to the city clerk's report.
I just put the board and commission vacancy ad up there again. I think Harbor has a few people have applied, more than the number, and everybody else is still short. I mean, a few have come in, but everybody's still short, so we're running out of time. Please talk to some people and see what else we can get. We're going to appoint those December 1st. That's all I'm going to report right now.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Moving on to correspondence, and there is none, I believe.
Correct.
Yep. So, ordinance and resolutions. Resolution 1121-42, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, placing a ballot proposition before the voters at the regular election on March 1st, 2022, amending City Charter Sections 2-1 entitled Mayor and City Council, Number and Qualifications, Designated Council Seats, and Section 10-2 entitled 3-Year Terms, Election at Large, Nonpartisan Elections, to remove designated seats for City Council members and clarify that council members and the mayor serve 3-year terms of office. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, thank you. We have a motion on the table. Is there discussion? And I'm going to start on the phone. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I guess I'm still in favor of changing this. I'm not so sure on the mayor thing, whether we need the 40% threshold or about that 40% threshold. On first reading, I guess I would support it. There is a problem though with it on page 30 in our packet, the last page of the resolution. If we take the 40% thing out, which we are prior to the paragraph on page 30, you go about a third of the way down there, and we're crossing off and not less than 40% of the total votes cast, and it goes in for the office of mayor or council seat, as the case may be, shall be elected. beyond that, the rest of that paragraph is never going to happen, because if you're not using the 40% threshold, then why are you talking about if no candidate gets 40%? I guess is my point there. That should have all been crossed out, everything from that point on, or am I not reading something right?
Is Holly on that?
Well, I'll tell you that I made an error, and there was supposed to be more of a strike through there. But then when I reread it again, I mean, I think Holly should be calling in any time, and she'll explain to you. I'm not sure of the whole runoff provision. Also, it might all have to go away. You know what I mean? But I think she had some.
Yeah, that's my point. Everything from that if on should be struck out, because you'll never get past that point anyway if you're getting rid of the 40% threshold, which we are everywhere else in that code up to that point. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't after that point, if that's our decision. And I'm not saying that that's the final decision at all at this point, but we need to be consistent at least.
Okay, I don't know if we should amend it first and then decide if, I guess, keep talking about it, or that's up to you guys.
Well, let's have Councilman Schaefer speak, since she was the second.
Sure. Thank you. So, yeah, I guess when we discussed this before, I was in favor of at least bringing it to the voters, but I did find that, I mean, I still think I understand what the thought behind it, because we don't represent specific, areas. But it does seem that this could create additional complications that, like, I definitely hadn't considered, the runoff or recount and what would happen. And so, yeah, I guess I was confused, or, I was surprised by reading through the memo, the different changes that would have to be made and what that would mean, and if there are other changes that we're not necessarily considering right now. And it's more complicated, I guess, than I had initially thought. So, needing to make sure that we understand what the full ramifications of this would be. And so I guess if we did it, it would never go to a runoff, because in the case of a tie, then there's a drawing. Is that what would happen?
Yes, I believe that's
And same
the
with a
truth.
recount? Yeah, and like same with a recount. I mean, I guess I just don't know what the threshold then would be.
I think that's Holly.
Yes, I'm here.
So Holly, this is Kathy Sherman. Thank you for joining us. We have Resolution 112142 on the table and some discussion. One of the questions is on page 30. In the middle, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down. So if we're eliminating the 40% of the total votes cast, if the sentence that begins, if no candidate for the office of mayor or for council, the votes cast for the officer's seat gets the 40%, do we still need that whole section? That's one thing we're asking. And then I guess based on Councilman Schaefer's comments, and I've had both of what Councilman Allison and Councilman Schaefer have mentioned were my comments as well, that this is way more complicated than I thought, and I also was questioning about that paragraph with the 40%. So maybe if you could just add a little clarification.
Absolutely, or I'll try, because truthfully, it was way more complicated than I thought too, right? So, and that's one of the challenges of changing something like this is that it's a domino effect, and it affects a lot of other substantive decisions that the council is going to need to consider. And you're right, you don't need that section, so you wouldn't need a runoff election, for example. But at the same time, you could maintain a runoff election, because you can imagine a situation where the candidates are in, there's 3 open seats, and then the two lowest vote getters, for lack of a better term, are very, very close in margin, right? And then that intent of the 40% would come into play a little bit, and it may be that council wants to consider creating a vote margin for the last seat of a certain percentage that would then trigger a runoff. But I didn't feel comfortable making those presumptions based on, and Susan and I talked about really where council was going, what their intent was, and what the reasoning was, and that all made sense to me, but I just couldn't I didn't want to be making law for you guys that was very much based in, it's very policy based, certainly not my job. So that's really why I left that there. I think under the title as written, we could strike the rest of that. But to the extent we want to preserve runoff, I think that we would really council needs to think about how that would be structured. And given the magnitude of that decision, I do think it's worth council's consideration regarding, is this a change you want to make now, since there were so many significant changes made last election cycle, or is this something that you want to treat in a more comprehensive way? Because when we have voter confusion, we have legal vulnerability. So I don't know if there's any questions on that.
Are there any questions online for our legal rep?
I've got a quick one.
Okay, Councilman Guard.
Yeah, would this be better served if we stepped back and figured out how to do a true ranked choice voting system for this? We're gonna be voting for multiple undesignated seats from a pool of candidates.
It's an excellent question. I mean, legally speaking, again, voters are about to go through a brand new process under ballot measure 2 with the ranked choice voting. And what we're doing is creating a different structure for elections of local officials, and it makes a lot of good sense to try to coordinate those changes and consider too their familiarity with the voting practice. And really think about it. And it really doesn't matter which way you come out legally, but I think having those discussions and that comprehensive consideration is going to serve you well. And it will also allow the clerk and I to go through, what this doesn't do is it doesn't put the ordinance changes in front of you. So, which is fine, because we would do that later, of course, but it lets us consider, how does this really play out? How does it fit in with ranked choice voting? Does ranked choice voting provide any benefit or value to your local voters and their representation? You know, it's so loaded.
Thank you.
Are there other questions online? Did you want to speak?
I do.
So I'm going to call on the city clerk.
If I recall, during the discussion putting this resolution in front of you, Councilmember Sherman mentioned the cost, and I brushed it off and said, well, there isn't much of a cost because it's just a ballot prop on a regular election. All of a sudden, with what Holly's talking about, with the comprehensive work over possibly, figuring out how it will look with changed ordinances also, now we're talking about a lot more staff time, a lot more attorney time also. So, I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't want to be mistaken the first time I said that it was inexpensive.
And just to dovetail into what Susan just said, when we make a change like this that can have impact on people's understanding of how to vote and how to exercise that, there's a lot of messaging and notice, and all of those pieces really have to be done well to protect the city from a challenge.
Are there any other comments online right now for discussion?
Well, I guess my only, this is Allison.
Good, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, my only comment, I guess my comments regarding this is, I guess I don't get as wrapped up into it as some are getting wrapped up into it. The voters already voted school board and CEC and TTC and hospital board that way, and the only thing that's going to be confusing is the ranked choice coming up, throwing that in there too. So, I don't think that there's going to be any confusion on how to vote, simply because we're already doing it in 5 other places in the community, and it was done that way at the not too distant past for everybody else. So, but I understand where we're going. You expect. You need to look at the other things involved. I would look at what the code was in 2005 or whenever we made this change the last time, and see what changes we made. Anyway, I know laws change. And anyway, it's just frustrating that something reversing something that was done not so long ago is all of a sudden going to take hundreds of hours reviewing this, and it's going to confuse all the voters. I just don't think that's going to happen. But I'm willing to send it back to staff. So, but if we're going to stay with seats for council, designated seats, then I think we ought to gerrymander the community and have a Whiskey Ridge representative and a downtown representative and have some areas that these people are representative, because general seats that cover the whole community aren't designated seats, they're general seats. So anyway, I'd move to refer to staff until staff can do a comprehensive plan for our voting system.
Councilman Schaefer
Does
has,
anybody want to second that? He moved to
well,
refer to
that's,
staff.
Councilman Schaefer has the second, do you?
Well, no, anybody can.
Okay,
Anybody
does
can.
anybody want to second that? Thank you. That's okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. Can I just jump in and have a chance to express my opinion? As all of you know, I'm not in favor of this in the first place. And it was 1995 that this was changed. And I would prefer to personally wait and see, because the state is, and many other communities and states are moving toward ranked choice voting. And I would prefer to not make huge changes in our charter at this point in time and kind of let elections settle out, maybe after 2022, and see what happens. I think it's a kind of a waste of our time, staff's time and energy, and our legal fees. And so my personal preference would be to refer it back to staff and come back to revisit it at a later date. Now what do we do?
Well, I guess I don't know what the motion to refer the first time, was it to try to still bring it back timely enough for this 2022 election or not?
This is Allison. No, that wasn't.
Okay.
My intent was when the attorney and the clerk think that the voters are comfortable with whatever system we're using, ranked source, or whatever everybody in the state's doing. No, I wasn't thinking that you would work on it at all for the next 6 months.
Okay,
Thanks for the clarification, Dave.
so you seem on board with it.
That was the intent of my second.
Okay. So,
So does anybody else want to speak to the motion to refer?
okay, so do I have anybody else online who wants to speak to the motion to refer it to staff?
This is Councilman Schaefer.
Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I'm also in favor of pushing this back to staff until a later date, and we have a better idea of how the new election system is going to go. Yeah, this was more complicated and complex than originally anticipated, so I think this is a good plan.
Okay. Any other comments online? So we'll
Yeah,
go
can't
ahead.
see this Alice won't back.
Sure, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I guess when it comes that time, you know, I obviously won't be on council at that time, but when it does come around to that, I would ask that you consider all voting, you know, for the school board and the hospital board. Be consistent. Let's make it all voting the same way so that there is no confusion.
Okay, thank you. That's a good point for all of us to consider. Okay, so are we ready for a roll call on, it's the amendment?
The motion to refer.
The motion to refer to staff.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yeah.
Jeff Guard,
Yes,
Kathy Sherman.
Yes,
Motion carries 4-0.
thank you for a good discussion, and thank you, Holly, for providing us with the background information. Okay, moving on, we have Resolution 11-2144, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing the City of Cordova to issue general obligation debt consisting of a loan from the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation in the principal amount of not to exceed $2 million to finance the removal and replacement of the creosote pilings with steel pilings and the installation of a waste handling system, and submitting the question of the issuance of such debt to the qualified voters of the city at the March 1st, 2022 regular city election. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second. So Councilman Schaefer, to your motion.
Thank you. I guess I do have a couple of questions. So I understand that this was included, like the replacement of the pilings was included in the RAISE grant, which we were awarded. So this would be to protect against increased costs of materials and labor. I guess is just a clarifying question. And then also, if we didn't need the $2 million, is it up to $2 million or is it a $2 million loan? And yeah, how is that handled?
Okay, Councilman Schaefer, this is Councilman Sherman. So I did a little research on this with the Public Works Director, Sam Greenwood, this week, and it is not to exceed $2 million. And yes, you are correct. A lot of this cost was involved in the RAISE grant, but that RAISE grant has been under process for a number of years, and we all know prices increase. And when I spoke with the Public Works Director about this, we talked about contingency, we talked about being able to do everything that we really wanted to do with the harbor project, and this would kind of, it's like a safeguard almost, and I can call the planner up, or the Public Works Director, sorry, Sam, if you'd like to hear from her directly. Did I answer your questions, Councilman Schaefer?
Oops, yes. I was on mute. I was talking to myself.
Okay. Would you like to hear from the...
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, so thank you for, I understand that prices have gone up and, recently, and especially since we submitted the grant. So it's not to exceed 2 million, and if we don't, if we don't need the full 2 million, would we end up borrowing that full amount, or?
I'm going to let the Public Works Director speak to that because she explained it to me as well.
That isn't working, so the closer to this you can get, the better.
We're jerry-rigging here today.
Okay, and the amount is $2 million, not to exceed $2 million.
Okay.
And what you do is you use the money and you submit for reimbursement. When you're done, you close the loan. You spend 1.5, you spend 1.2, you spend 2 million, whatever, you close the loan. You can also not even activate the loan, but without going through this process, the loan is unavailable to us. We have to move through the voting process, and we have to move through the paperwork that I'll be doing for the next 6 months for the loan to occur. And as Helen said, we have a engineer right now looking at the costs and giving us a more accurate estimate of the costs. So, our end goal is to come out of here with no debt, which we obviously are going to have 5 million, but that's our end goal. But we need to be ready.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Okay.
Are there other questions online?
It's Allison.
Sure, Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I don't have any real questions. I guess I support this, but I do have comments, and they relate back to what I've said several times over the course of talking about things that we put before the voters. I think we need to have a similar to what we did the last time with Sam and the staff did the last time with a good public outreach prior to the election, sooner than later, about this whole harbor project, because the first thing I'm going to get from some of my constituents is, you're getting $20 million. What do you need another $2 million of my tax money? And for voting, it's a general obligation bond. I appreciate that it's got a way for repaying with harbor funds, but we're asking the general voters to do a geo bond, or not a geo bond, but a loan based upon the full faith and credit of the community as a whole. So I just think we need to do our public outreach and our advocacy for this need to be strong, and the public needs to know the plan now that we've got a $32 million project at least heading our way. We need to be sure that the community is aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and what it's going to do for us. So that's just my comment is we need to be strong advocates for this and make sure that we get the information out there before the early voting starts taking place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Allison. And I just will tell you that the staff in the audience is nodding their heads, and the Public Works Director would like to respond.
I think I just want to emphasize, and you mentioned it, but this is not coming from property tax. This is a harbor repayment on the loan, and I think that's important for staff as well as council to share that information, which I believe was your point. So we fully intend to do those just like we did with the refuse equipment. Maybe we'll even do a video, but Tony gets to star in it this time. So yeah, we fully intend to make this public and get support in that direction.
Does that answer your question or your comments, Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I know everybody is aware of it. I just,
Yep.
I just want to stress that because sometimes in the past we have not been good advocates for what we put out to the public, and again, I commend staff, Sam and the rubbish guys did an excellent job on that, advocating for their equipment that they needed, and I think we need to have a even stronger commitment to making sure the public is well informed of this entire project since the project is growing. So, this is just $2 million part of it, but now everybody's going to throw the whole package in together. So we just need to advocate for it, and I know everybody will. I just want to stress that. So.
Well, thank you for those comments. Anybody else online want to add to the discussion of this resolution? Hearing none, let's move forward.
Roll call.
Roll call.
So on resolution 11/21/44, Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
David Allison.
Yeah.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, thank you for good discussion on that. And thank you to the Public Works Director. So we're gonna move back to, we put 13A, Resolution 11/21/43, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, confirming application for the ARPA Local Government Lost Revenue Relief Program, hereinafter, oh my goodness, LGLRRP, from the Alaska Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development to offset significant revenue loss due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Do I have a second? Mr. Guard, thank you. Mr. Allison, to your motion.
Yeah, I pulled this from the consent calendar just simply because I agree with it. I think we need to do it. However, and I know that the timeline is such that we don't have information quite yet and haven't filled in all the blanks quite yet, but then this is all due, maybe before we can have more meetings on it. But I just want to point out that the resolution says very specifically that now therefore be it resolved that the City of Cordova confirms applications for funds. Oh, that's okay. The whereas above that was what I was concerned with. Whereas the City of Cordova attests to the accuracy of the attached program worksheet. There are no numbers in the worksheet, so I guess I'm attesting to the accuracy that the columns are in the right spot or something. I think it's, that's stating that I agree with the final product that comes out here that gets submitted to the state. I think that's what we're trying to do, but we just don't have the numbers. And I think somewhere in the record, I don't want to be attesting to something and then somebody plug in $50 million in there because they just want to try to do that. Anyway, I think you understand what I'm saying there. I'll support the resolution and I'll vote to pass it, but I think we need to make every effort to, if we don't have the numbers, to indicate that in the write-up or the motion that says, we need to do this, timing is of the essence. We don't have exact numbers yet, but we will have them before we submit, and we'll submit a copy to council once it's done, something along those lines. But, you know, because I'm confirming something that I can't see. So that was my concern with it.
Okay.
If I may speak to that, I think it's a very appropriate concern, but it's a formula, and what we have to do is plug in our actual numbers from the audit for 2020, which we of course do not yet have, but we will have, and we will have to confirm those numbers when the audit finally comes in. So they're very specific numbers. We don't get to create numbers. We don't get to make anything up. They ask for, you know, gross revenue from 2019, and gross revenue from 2020, and then the difference there, and then they have a whole calculation that they have established that have to be followed. So we will be plugging numbers in actually based on what the audit gives us here in the next few days, but we'll have it submitted next week before this. There is a deadline of the 6th. The way that this is being run by the state is that there's a pool of money. Anyone who applies for it will be prioritized by who lost the most money, and they'll wager some kind of a formula that will allocate some sum of money to all affected communities. I believe there might be, if there's any resources still available at the end of the year, there will be a second round in January or February, but you will only get to dip in once. And if you wait till the later round, the funds available will be significantly less. So just for transparency, just so you know the process, the state's driving the calculus, they're driving, you know, how we calculate the numbers, and it has to be based on real things that we have to support and back up with an audit. So I think if we were making up our own numbers, it would be something that the state drives.
Councilman
Yeah,
Els?
I appreciate that. If I could follow up with that.
Yes.
I appreciate that, Helen, and I do understand all of that, that it's formula-based and everything. My point is that the resolution says we're attesting to the accuracy of the worksheet.
Right. Well, maybe should we strike that? I don't know that. Can you tell me if that was necessary in the resolution?
Well, I don't know if it's
can't remember what
necessary.
the state required.
That is the exact resolution that the state put in the application packet. So that is the exact resolution I put
Okay, then
forward.
we have to submit that.
And I don't have a problem with the way it is. I just let the record show, and please put in the minutes Susan Helen's comments about that it's formula based on the audit, and that will be before it gets submitted, and the numbers will be based on all of those formulas, and et cetera, just so that the official record, somewhere back down the line will show that we didn't just blank check authorize something like we are doing.
Absolutely.
But I support it.
I agree. I will do that.
Thank you, Councilman Allison. Councilman Guard is the second. Do you have some comments?
No comments. Like so many other things we've dealt with during our pandemic life here, we don't always get all the information we have to before we have to make a decision that puts us in the quay for somebody else's stuff. So I'm in favor of it as is.
Councilman Schaefer online.
Yes, I'm also in support.
Thanks.
I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you, Ann. And I too am in support, but I appreciate Councilman Allison's comments. And yeah, this whole thing, we're jumping through hoops and all doing our very best, but it's money I think our community can use. So are we ready for a roll call?
Sure.
Okay.
Call for the question.
Thank you.
Jeff Guard.
Yes.
Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, thanks again for the good discussion. So now we're at, 13B, which is Resolution 11-21-45, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, approving the sale of the east portion, Lot 10, Block 6, USS 3345 A and B, EAC addition to Kim Hager. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman.
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Allison Guard.
Okay, so Councilman Allison.
Okay, maybe I pulled this again because I had a couple of clarifying questions, or I needed clarification of a couple of things. We state in all the backup documents and such that we're willing to accept a payment plan, and we had talked about that, and I don't know if the purchaser plans on utilizing that, but then in the actual agreement, I didn't see anything about a payment plan, but then as I read it deeper, say he makes a $5,000 payment and then a $10,000 payment, does that all go to the what do they call that, the title company as an escrow until it's all paid in full? And because the agreement says that the escrow company will collect all of the stuff from him and all of the stuff from us, and then once that's all completed, once he has everything, it'll transact. I just don't want him to get the title and the quick claim deed for it after only paying $5,000 of it. I want that, that to happen. I'm willing to take payment, but I'm not willing to jump the horse on that to give everything from our side without having our side as well. So, and if that's what that means, that his payments go to the escrow company until the full payment is made, and then the title then the deed gets transferred, and all of that happens once all the money is in hand, then I'm good with the way it is. But I just needed clarification on that.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
Is Kevin in the room?
Yes, he is, and I was just gonna call on him. Kevin, you might need to come closer, sorry.
Yeah, so I worked with Holly on getting the additional items that the council requested be put into the sale agreement. So based on what she said and wrote in here, it's my understanding that, there would be no transfer of the title or of the deed until the full payments have been received. He would be allowed to use the property, and have access to it and things like that, but would not have the official deed until payments have been completed.
Okay, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Councilman Guard as the second, do you have any questions?
None, except I'm in favor. We've heard enough about this whole thing and finally have it worked out.
Councilman Schaefer, I'll call on you.
No, that was a good question. Thanks for clarifying. I'm also in favor.
And I second all that. Thanks for the clarification, Councilman Allison. We will miss your wise advice on council. Okay, are we ready for a call for the question? Hearing no objections.
Oh.
What? Councilman Guard.
It says call for the question.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right, again, thank you, and thank you, Kevin, for clarifying. Unfinished business, we have none. New and miscellaneous business, discussion of COVID-19 emergency response. Helen, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we're just simmering along. We've had a little uptick in cases, usually within family units when they're clustered, but we're managing vax rates. People are still able to get vaccinations of any of the 3 vaccines at the clinics, and we are encouraging people, of course, to get their booster, and young people are now able to get the vaccine if they are 12 and older. Is that right? Yes.
Yes.
So again, everyone do what you're comfortable with, but please take care of your family and continue to be careful in large groups and in settings where you're not sure the status of the folks whom you are around.
Thanks, Helen. And if council allows, I was just going to add, I was pretty happy that we've already held the Electrify Alaska conference with about 75 attendees, and that was successful with no major outbreaks or spread. And we've also held the play, the theater, and some concerts, and so no major exceptions in any of those regards. So that's nice to see in our community. Moving on, pending agenda, CIP list, calendar, elected and appointed official list. Comments, questions? I'll go ahead, hearing nothing from above or wherever you guys are. I think it would be great if we could add the council discussion for the Planning and Zoning Commission, or just our talk about residential lots that we asked about last time, if that could be on an agenda. But I think budget needs to come first. But I was just gonna.
So it's on there as number 6 in the top. Do you guys want to at least, try and put a season to it, or some kind of a date that I can add in there?
Maybe after the first of the year, would that work for everyone?
This is Councilman Schaefer.
Go ahead, Ann.
Don't they usually consider the land use map at the beginning of the year? It might be a good way to just tie it in with their land use map discussion, how we actually want to use the different zones.
Yeah, correct.
Yes, you are correct, and that sounds like a really good idea. So maybe we'll tie that in, and maybe we could. It was so advantageous to have a joint session with the Planning Commission. Maybe we could just do the same and have a small work session together.
Kevin and Susan are paying attention.
Okay, after the first of the year, let's get through the budget. Anyone else on the pending agenda? Or the CIP list? Or calendars? Where's everybody gonna be for the next meeting?
Shoot.
Which is December 1st.
I'll be here.
You'll be here in person? Mr. Allison, did you say that's the day you get
Oh, wait,
home?
when is the next meeting? I'm sorry, actually. I'm
December-
thinking Wednesday.
December 1st.
Yes, I'll be here.
Okay. All right, well, I'll be in touch with you guys by text and email again. And we'll do the work session at 6 on the 1st, and then the regular meeting.
Do we have a work session next Wednesday?
It's the day before
No,
Thanksgiving. Yeah, we're skipping it.
Okay.
You will be baking pies.
I know. Oh, no.
Okay. Me neither.
Sounds good.
Any other comments on the pending agenda? Hearing none. Audience participation. I see our lovely City Hall staff sitting here. And council comments. We'll start first on the phone. Councilman Allison.
Yes, thank you. Kathy. Just a point of clarification, I think Helen had said shots were available for 12 and up, but they're actually available for 5 to 11-year-olds too, so 5 on
Okay, thank you.
not vaccinated. So, anyway, thank you, staff, Helen and all your staff, Sam, everybody that did good work for that grant. That's excellent news. That now we've got a really big project to go on down at the harbor, and we'd like to stress once again that we need to make sure that we have a good plan that the public knows about, that we can make sure that everybody knows that we know what we're spending our money on, and we're not just spending it because we've got it, and that there is a plan, and I don't think too many people have seen what the final plans are, and I don't even know that we have a final plan yet, but anyway, when those plans come around, before we start spending too much money, I think we need to spend some of that money on educating the public. But thank you for all the excellent work everybody did on that. Appreciate that. That'll be good for the community, and hopefully there'll be some kudos passed out publicly so that the public can know that our staff is working hard for the public all the time. And thank you, Kathy, for your leadership in these meetings. You've been filling in quite a bit lately, and you've been doing a fantastic job, and I appreciate that. So we'll see everybody next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ellison. Councilman Guard.
Yeah, I too would like to throw kudos, gold stars, and all the accolades I can to Ellen and staff for finding the money tree and shaking $20 million out of it for our harbor. That was one of the biggest things hanging over the city's head here. So I don't think I can say enough for everything they've done in this. We were competing against a lot of other entities with way bigger staffs and way more horsepower than we got. And the little bird of Cordova prevailed, which seems to happen regularly, but not regular enough, I guess. But anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for that, like I was saying, and I would like to put in a plug for sitting down at some time before we start next budget cycle after this and do some long-term financial planning for Cordova. We seem to run from disaster du jour to disaster du jour. We're now looking at using earnings of the permanent fund instead of building it back up between major withdrawals. I just think it would behoove us to sit down and do some long-term financial planning for the community. See where we should sit and make sure we're pointed in a good direction. Anyway, thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman Guard. Councilman Schaefer.
Hi, yes. I would also, and hearty congratulations and thank you to all of the staff that worked so hard on those grant packages. It's really exciting, and it's going to be a huge and good project for Cordova. I'm excited to see where it goes. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, I'll follow up. Yeah, I'm pretty excited because I'm a harbor user and I'm on that side of the harbor, so I'm looking forward to all the improvements. And I really think the staff that Helen has put together or were previously here did an awesome job, because that's a huge grant, and even during the Cordova Center, we were never able to come up with that kind of chunk of change. So kudos to everybody on that. And I think it's going to just be a real feather in our cap, and our harbor is our lifeblood, and how exciting is this? So yeah, great on that. Oh, there was other stuff I was gonna say. And I've forgotten what it is. So I'll call it good. But thank you all for calling in so that we had a quorum tonight. This was really great. And one last motion.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Allison.
With another second?
I knew you would be first, David. Thank you.
And no objection.
And hearing no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you, Susan.
Hey,